guess I'll go. And so the first question was about if we pulled out of the Joint Terrorism Task Force. I'm sorry, repeat the first question, please.
If we were to withdraw from JTTF, how would police plan to address issues with white supremacists?
Yes, that was the one.
And because the FBI has announced that they are looking at that, but how would they address that?
Well, you're right. The FBI is responsible for investigating hate crimes and white supremacist operations. And that is not the job of the JTTF, that is the job of the FBI. And so pulling out of the Joint Terrorism Task Force will have no impact on investigations of white supremacists. But let me just say, we don't actually do many investigations of white supremacists because we are really confused in Oregon about the difference between hate speech and free speech. And so that's another conversation for another night. But let me just say that, yes, it shouldn't be a concern if we pull out of the Joint Terrorism Task Force that white supremacy will be supercharged. Now the second part of your question was, if a terrorist event happens, what happens? What would happen? What would happen in a normal emergency is that we would implement our emergency measures using our emergency first responders, right? And so as the person who's in charge of the PBEM, Portland Bureau of Emergency Management, it would be that bureau that would be responding. But in addition, firefighters would be responding, Portland police officers would be responding, and so we would have full access to all the public safety resources that we have if a terrorist activity did happen in the city of Portland.
Yeah, I was just going to piggyback again, if you don't mind. So, as to the first question, the one about what we do about white supremacists in our communities, and in particular folks that are targeting our community members. I have sort of two things to add there. One is that our expert, actually Mike German, the former FBI agent who came out last year, just recently wrote an article about how the FBI has actually been arguing that it doesn't have authority to investigate white supremacy. So it's very interesting that I think they're sort of talking out of both sides of their mouth. We also know that when the Trump administration took over, there was an explicit order to the FBI to stop investigating white supremacy. And so, I think that it's dubious at best that they're bringing this argument out. The other thing, though, about what we can actually do here in the state of Oregon, there is a hate crime task force that was formed in response to legislation passed by the Oregon State Legislature. Unite Oregon, ACLU, CARE, and a variety of other folks have been engaged in that hate crime task force. And there are some really good things that are coming out of that work that I think are going to help address some of the things that are happening in our communities. I'll highlight two of them. One is that we want to actually make it so that we have a clearer understanding of what is happening. According to the City of Portland and the Portland Police Bureau and the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office, there were 0 hate crimes in Portland in the last several years. That's after the max stabbing, right? So they reported 0 hate crimes in the City of Portland, which we know is not true, right? So we want to change the requirements and actually hold our district attorney offices and our police bureaus responsible for making sure that they actually accurately take in information about hate crimes and report that information, and that it's followed up on. The other thing is that we want to make sure that when people go to law enforcement, that they actually get the response that the community members need when they're reporting a hate crime. And we want that to be expansive so that it's not just when the sort of threshold of criminal activity has been met, but when people have been targeted with a hate incident, right? Because there are things that happen that don't necessarily rise to the level of a hate crime, but they still impact people. And so what we're looking to do is actually create a full-time staff person at the Department of Justice who who follows up with community members and helps to build out actual support around those folks. So connecting them to resources and support, connecting them to community organizations, making sure that they're taken seriously in a culturally sensitive way, making sure in a trauma-informed way, and making sure that we follow up with them and actually follow what's happening with them, because we know sometimes these incidents, it may be hate speech to start with, right? It may be just targeting someone in that way, and it escalates or it builds on itself, right? And then next thing you know, someone has actually been targeted with something that rises to the level of a hate crime. So if people are reporting those things, we want to be able to actually build support out around them so that there's enough support that it doesn't actually get to that level. So I think those are all things that you're going to see in the Oregon State Legislature this session that we think are things that we can do here locally to actually support our communities.
Thank you, but I think that's one of the things I was trying to highlight. So yes, the Attorney General's task force is right now addressing and trying to figure out ways to strengthen our hate crimes laws in Oregon. So both ACLU and United Oregon and CARE are part of that conversation, and we're trying to help the task force to ensure that, first of all, I think one of the things that we can do is to collect data, right? So like, if you don't understand what you're dealing with without the data, you can't address it, right? A good example is the city of Eugene. According to the recent hate crimes report in Oregon, we have about 146 cases reported back in 2017, and again, that's just with caveats. It's underreported, right? So with that 146 reported, 72 of those cases was reported in Eugene, city of Eugene. And it's amazing. Eugene has more hate crimes than Portland or the rest of the state. Almost half of the reports have been reported in Eugene. No, because Eugene has a very robust data collection system. So I think number one, we have to really create data collection. And I think we want to highlight also the work that PUA is Portland Against United Against Hate is doing. And that's a program I would hope the city will continue to invest that coalition rather than the amount of money that they spend sending two police officers to reach out to the JTTF. That resource I hope will go to the community, because that group is really doing amazing work. They are helping individual community members who are experiencing hate incidents and hate crimes through appropriate channels where they can report. They are educating the community about how they can recognize when there is a difference between hate crimes and hate incidents and knowing their rights. So they are engaged very deeply about this issue, and this is a new program, and I think this will be important that City of Portland to continue to invest this program, because part of that also they are collecting data. So I hope you all get that information, how you report hate crimes in City of Portland, and hopefully that data will tell us, at least give us some sort of a glimpse of picture what's happening in the city of Portland. Because I can tell you, the community members I'm working with every day, this is not, it comes to the point that they should not even report, because it's just so many hate incidents and hate crimes that are happening today. And sometimes the law enforcement agencies also don't respond in the appropriate way. So there's ways that we can invest the community rather than, investing in other areas of like the JT10. So with that said, I'll stop there.
I got a question submitted to me over here. After I ask this question, if folks can just keep their hand up and I can form a mental cue as best I can. I'm just going to read this question off. Has the Joint Terrorism Task Force been giving data profiles to political parties and private security firms, or sharing information with private businesses?
We don't know. Nobody knows.
The answer is we don't know. Alrighty.
Thank you. I was just wondering if we are, in fact, totally sold on this idea that we should pull out of the JTTF, and I am, what are the most effective ways for us to pressure the city to do that?
Glad you asked. I think it's important that you write talk to your elected leaders on the Portland City Council. I think it's important that they hear directly from community members. I certainly get emails daily from folks that said, we gotta pull out, we gotta pull out. And so it's important that they hear directly from you. I think I can tell you, I know that there are a couple of folks who just aren't gonna move. They think that JTTF provides safety, and they're just not gonna move from that position. And that's okay, because we only need 3 votes to pull out of the Joint Terrorism Task Force. Just like we had 3 votes to get back in, we only need 3 to get back out.
I'd like to answer that one as well. Email all 5 of us at the same time, because otherwise we don't know whether you've already said it to everybody else, even though, as Commissioner Hardesty said, there may not be any movement. It doesn't cost any more to email all 5 of us. And just use your own words. Do not send me a change.org petition that I get the same blooming email 500 times. It's really demoralising. So just tell me in 2 sentences why does it matter to you, and why you think what you want us to do.
I just want to acknowledge also that the city of San Francisco actually withdrew the JTTF in 2017, and this is what the reasons why they decided not to join anymore the JTTF. They acknowledge that working with the FBI in the current form would lead a violation of state and local laws and policies. That's the reason that why they withdraw with the JTTF.
Hi, my name is Robert Cooper, and I have a question regarding Mohammed. Is there any efforts to get him exonerated? Because I think he's innocent, and I'd like to see him free.
Yeah, so I have not personally been involved in the litigation on that, but the ACLU has been involved in his case from the beginning, and as far as I know, that is still an ongoing effort. I know the last time I got an update on it was maybe about 6 or 7 months ago, but I know that that's an ongoing effort by the ACLU. So I guess until we have until we've exhausted all of our chances, that is something that I wish I had more information. I think that it's quite likely that there's information on our national website or on our local website.
Hi, I'm Mark, and I work with the National Lawyers Guild, and we testified back in 2005, I guess, to get us out. Are there any conditions that the panel would feel okay about staying in, particularly transparency? I know this won't work, but what if the police commissioner, plus a member of council, plus the director of internal police review were classified, getting in the system so that they could monitor and ensure that we're following Oregon guidelines, not only FBI guidelines. So I'd like you to comment, are there any conditions that you feel would be a transparency that would allow us to stay in, and then we could push those points with the other commissioners?
So that's a really good question, and we went that route before. I think when we knew that the city of Portland was going to get back, or when they were going to go into the case-by-case collaboration with the JTTF, it actually created some difficulty among the advocates on this issue, because my organization, the ACLU, decided, well, I feel like there's sometimes where it's like you stand in front of the train or you jump on top of the train and try to like tinker with the gears. And I think this was a situation where the folks that were working at our organization felt like this is going to go through, whether or not we oppose it. And so we should try to build in some protections, including those things like transparency. And I think what we've learned since then is that those protections didn't work. The reports were just terrible. And so at this point, on a personal level, and I think the other folks at my organization agree, we just don't trust that those types of protections would actually work.
I would say I agree with that. It's interesting because Mr. Cannon did say to me this week, oh, well, if you want reports, we could come up with some reports. We didn't know that we were required to give reports, right? Well, we'd be happy to go back and talk about like what would make sense for us to like release to you. And so I thought that conversation was very telling because until they knew that there was a city commissioner who had a focus on pulling us out of the Joint Tourism Task Force, they were very comfortable with not sharing information, with not telling us what they were doing, not telling us what our officers are doing, right? And so now they want to manufacture reports that they think will be appeasing to city commissioners, and I wasn't impressed with that proposal.